The first time I heard about EMDR therapy, it was from an early partner who introduced a geeky friend of hers as he does this healing thing with flashing lights. Little flashing lights go back and forth and energy clears up. And having been exposed to so much nonsense, what was it? Helion particles, gold-plated this, that, and the other, elixirs, tinctures, etc. It seemed rather hokey to line up a bunch of LED lights and go back and forth. And so I went to a session without any understanding of trauma, without any understanding of the research, and I just sat, thought about a few things, watched the lights go back and forth, and didn't really notice anything. And so that was my first exposure to EMDR. My next exposure to EMDR was in Bessel van der Kolk's book, The Body Keeps the Score, which I think is one of the most impressive books in the whole terrain of books and media. And what was interesting was that Bessel was very dismissive of EMDR, as I had been, but there was case study after case study of really profound change. And it was talking about the movement of the eyes in a way that we didn't fully understand as science, etc. And so multiple things shifted before my next EMDR session. Learning about trauma, learning that this could be very powerful for trauma, and understanding its connection with eye movement, which also I think ties in a little bit with NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. And so I came into it with more respect. And I also had incredibly charged emotions. Now, here's one of the things that I think is important to understand in therapeutic environments. I liked the woman who I was talking to in the EMDR environment, number one. Number two, I needed a bonding experience because I felt completely unbonded. There was no secure relationship in my life at the time. And a lot came out in the talking because of the empathy on her face. And so the belief in EMDR, the trigger of disrupting, I do believe that our eyes in some way, if we look at the dream experience, what we understand is that the eyes move around synonymously with or in a corollary pattern with the dream. In other words, most systems work both ways. If you're looking at a dream experience and it produces a visual pattern. So if you're dreaming and your eyes follow a certain pattern, what it's suggesting is that there is a neuronal connection between the movement of the eyes and what is imagined, what is dreamed, what is thought. One. Two, it's also suggesting that it's suggesting that the same is true then in reverse. Think of it as a gear type of thing. If we've got a connection and this hand moves here, then the other hand moves with it. But the same is true in reverse, because if this hand moves, it moves over here. And so if dreamscapes and consciousness shift the eyes, then the eyes may be able to shift dreamscapes and consciousness. And what a rhythmical, regulated eye movement creates is a disruption in an underlying thought pattern. And so here's another way of looking at it. The event, the traumatic event in question, or any event in question, has with it an associated eye pattern that mirrors. So when you think of that thought, your eyes move in a certain way that correspond with that thought, with that traumatic event. And that if you interrupt the eyes while concentrating on the event, then the thought pattern is interrupted as well. Well, if we understand PTSD and stored trauma in the body to be a pattern of dis-ease, a pattern that no longer serves, then it makes perfect sense to focus the eyes in rhythmical, disruptive movements while turning one's attention to the issue. And so that's a theory that I've developed in the last 6 minutes, because that's one of the things that I find occurs as I learn through talking and piecing things together. Language populates itself into images and connections, and then in the midst of speaking, those connections fit together and make a lot more sense. So that's my understanding of how it works. Now, the second EMDR session was profoundly supportive. However, this is where I think so much of the fragmentation of our healing awareness, hurts us, because I would say 30 to 40% of the value in the interaction came from the empathy of the woman. Now, in high trauma and with early childhood attachment disorder combined, it's very hard to form a secure relationship because the template of relating is it's an all or nothing template when you don't learn regulating bonding skills with either parent. It tends to be kind of an all or nothing thing. And the vulnerability involved led me to want to form a strong attachment to my therapist. And to hold the intensity of that, what I needed was a regular container. But her schedule was all over the place. Oh, I'm out of town here, this, that, and the other. I can't, no, I'm not available on this, not responding to an email in a timely way. And I just felt like I can't hold all this intensity, and I can't have it yo-yoed around. And so I stopped after that first session of EMDR because I didn't want that intensity of the emotion to feel yo-yoed around in a helpless state. And so, that comes to the end of that piece of therapy. Which then led me to the question of, there's 30 LED lights going back and forth on a 3-foot bar. If this was manufactured in any intelligent way, these would cost $30, and I could stick one on a wall and do this same process myself reliably. But that's when I discovered that the cheapest little LED strip of lights that one could get for EMDR was $400 used and $600 to $800 new. And I wasn't sure how much of the protocol was talking with the woman and how much was the EMDR. So I thought I'd feel really crappy, particularly there's anxiety around money when there's PTSD because it's a debilitating disease. And so there's uncertainty. Can I provide the same, benefit to my clients? Can I provide the same benefit? If I have PTSD, and if I can't, and if this doesn't help, will I run out of money because I can't earn money? And so the $400 for such a speculative thing partly irritated me because the thing could be made for $29 very easily and mass produced. So why isn't it? Just a roll-up light switch that goes back and forth. What's the big deal? And so it's that's a bit disturbing. Then I contacted Bessel van der Kolk because his group, and because I thought, wait a minute, what if the home protocol works and other people like me are not wanting to spend $400? Couldn't we manufacture something for $30 as a non-profit venture to help traumatized victims? But then Bessel van der Kolk's group didn't want to respond or talk about the issue, which seemed frustrating and counterproductive. It's like trauma is this huge thing in our culture, and Bessel acknowledges it, but nobody wants to talk about these very basic, simple things that can make a huge difference in a traumatized person's life, including, if I could do EMDR at the same potency for $30 rather than $150 a pop, plus driving time, plus the anxiety of kind of scheduling, because at the time I was doing dissociative sleep patterns in order to manage the grief and overwhelm. The jet lag from changing sleep patterns constantly dulls awareness in the same way that alcohol does, but without the physiological damage to the liver. And so, that was its own stress. Now, as I then realized I had a 27-inch, computer monitor, and I had a 27-inch computer monitor, and I should be able to find a program that would just have a little bit of a light go back and forth on a black screen. And I couldn't get. There were all kinds of crazy programs around that would do online sessions for like $160, but I wasn't sure if they'd work, and they didn't offer a free sample. So then I found on Microsoft's app program, a German company basically has a dot go back and forth at different speeds and different intensities. So that was $15, and I bought that. And I've done that a few times, and it has intermittent results. But I'm going to try it again after this video. So this is my evolution around EMDR to current point.